Yes, hello and welcome to another episode of the Match Report, hosted by your boys at Free Midfield. I am your host, Kojo, for today. Cahill will be here soon. Of course, he's not going to miss this. Arsenal won on the weekend again, so he's going to turn up. Don't worry about that. But we've got two great guests with us. Now, I'll do the returning guests first, and then we'll do the special intro for the newest guests to the show. So first, returning with a great big smile on his face after his team won again on this weekend is Art. How you doing, sir?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me again. And I feel like this will probably be a much more positive pod than the last one I was on. And hopefully that's the case again next time I'm on, whenever that is. But yeah, good to be back and glad to be here.
Awesome. Welcome back. And yes, anyone that has listened to Art in the past has always been paying here for Arsenal for. So he's earned the smile on his face. And finally, definitely not last but not least as well, a newest guest to the Free Midfield show. He's a Liverpool fan, as you can see from the name Shankly Sessions. If you know your history, you will know about the legend that is Bill Shankly. Niall from the Upper Tier podcast. How you doing, sir?
Good. How are you? Thanks for having me on. I would say a pleasure, but it's a bit rough at the moment. It's like we've traded places with Arsenal or something like that. It's just it's tough at the moment, but we show up and we keep on going. I've been a lifelong fan of Liverpool, and nothing's going to change that. But yeah, as I said before we came on, we were talking backstage. As I said to people, if I didn't follow Liverpool, I would probably end up following Arsenal. I worked for years with Arsenal fans through the Wenger era and stuff like that, and the football that they played and how they changed football and stuff like that and all. And some of those beautiful players that were there and beautiful matches and stuff like that and all. So I don't have any axe to grind at all with Arsenal at all. I'm quite happy to see Arsenal doing really, really well. Obviously, I'd like to see my own team doing much better, but yeah, it's a struggle. Thanks for having me on this Liverpool therapy session, as they say.
Everyone goes for therapy at Free Midfield. And well, everyone that's listened to me before, obviously, I'm a Man United fan, so hold some peace for me, because even though we won, I'm watching my rivals compete for titles again, and I'm just sitting on the sideline. So there you go. But anyway, I digress. We will go into the Premier League weekend. And I think what we're going to do, I did mention it before, but I think we're going to start here first at Brendan Rodgers and Leicester instead. Because Leicester have lost again. They lost 2-1 away to Bournemouth. They did take the lead, but they did throw it away. Now, let's start with Niall. Now, he used to manage your club, so I think we'll start with you. What is going on at Leicester from your viewpoint? Brendan Rodgers, he's had a good time at Leicester, I think it's fair to say. They've been to Europe a couple of times. He won the FA Cup not too long ago. They've been notorious for having decent windows when you look at some of their signings. They've got a good squad. So what is missing here? What's happening that they're just not able to get into a good run of form?
It's kind of like Groundhog Day, isn't it? It's not dissimilar to what happened when he was at Liverpool as well. It's just a kind of, I expected them to make the change during the international break. Actually, I was quite surprised that they didn't. I know he has a bit of credit in the bank there and stuff like that with winning the FA Cup and his runs in Europe and stuff like that, but there seems to be a number of players there that he has lost, and a number of players there that have been kind of touting themselves out there, wanting moves. I know James Maddison was heavily linked with a move during the summer. I know that Tielemans basically has kind of checked out somewhat, even though he did an interview a few weeks ago saying that he was quite happy at Leicester and this kind of thing. But it's a difficult one for them as well, and they're kind of like, they're going through a confidence thing as well, that when they drop a goal or where they go behind or an equaliser, they tend to fall asunder as well, and they tend to go back into their shell, and they don't play that open, expansive football that we used to. Obviously, losing Wesley Fofana was huge, and it was huge for them last year as well when he was out for most of the season with the injury. And then losing him this year after being so loyal to the player who was out for basically the season was a huge blow for them. And I think they're just struggling. Obviously, Vardy is now getting on and stuff like that, and most teams have probably worked him out somewhat. Maddison is incredible player. I don't understand how he's not like one of the first names on Southgate's team sheet. He's fantastic. But they just seem like they've lost their way somewhat. And I know there's issues there as well in terms of financial fair play and stuff like that as well. So they're kind of hampered in some of the things that they want to do. And it looks like it's just unravelled a little bit in terms of a fan base, I suppose, that has much higher expectations than in previous times. I mean, obviously they had won a Premier League, and then they had won the FA Cup, and they had some good runs in Europe and stuff like that. And they were looking like they were going to break into that top 6, top 4 kind of thing. They had a couple of really good runs in the league, and then they just faltered for a couple of seasons, fell out of that top 4, top 6 type of thing. And it's a struggle for him at the moment. And he looks, when you listen to Brendan's post-match interviews and stuff like that, he sounds like a man who's kind of who needs a change of scenery, I would think. And that's how I would kind of sum up Leicester at the moment.
And following on that, the change of scenery thing. Now, Rodgers was linked with your club in the past. Obviously, you're on to better things now. Arteta's run is looking to look like a success so far. But one, did you envisage it ever going this bad at Leicester for him, considering his track record at the club so far? And two, the question being, if he was to leave, do you think there's much of a window there for him, as in what's his next move? Because he's managed a big club in Liverpool. Obviously, he did his thing with Celtic. They went unbeaten a couple of times, won a lot of trophies. He's back in the English Premier League at Leicester. But after Leicester, do you think there's a window there for him to manage another club here?
Yeah, on the first point, I don't think I did envisage it getting this bad. I think also another point that's quite important is probably how not only did they lose Fofana, but Kasper Schmeichel in goal as well. I think you've seen the drop-off in quality between him and Danny Ward. Not to throw shade or anything, but you can just see the base level of reliability isn't the same, I feel. Not just in the back four, but in the goalkeeper as well. Because even though they only scored once on the weekend, throughout the season, they've been scoring 2-3 goals a game and still lose. And you can't do that in the Premier League. If you're scoring those amount of goals in games, you have to be winning. And I think for me personally, it was funny you say Arsenal were linked, because at the time I was actually quite, if it did go that way, I wouldn't have minded it at all, because the way he tries to play football, I can get on board with that. I think no one can say he's not a good coach, because he has proven that he is. But it's just about, I guess, the time frame. Because if you look at Liverpool, he was there probably, 3.5 years? Celtic, similar amount of time. And I don't think he'd gone into or completed the 4th season at a club. And this is his 4th year at Leicester, I believe. So he was getting to kind of the end of his usual timeline anyway. So I would be intrigued to see if he'd get another chance. Personally, I don't think the Brendan Rodgers stocks would be on the floor when it next comes to a managerial appointment having to be made, especially because you can see quite publicly there have been a few things that have gone against him. So even if you don't look at Fofana and Schmeichel leaving, you've got his kind of very public discussion. I think it was on BT Sport. It was a pre-match interview where he spoke about scouting players during the summer, actually talking to players, and then all of a sudden he comes back in for pre-season and the purse strings get tightened and he can't speak to those players anymore. And I think if you're any manager in the league, that's going to be a bit of a ball ache for you. So I think there are considerations to be had, but there are obviously places where they should be held accountable as well. And I think even if this is kind of the last few weeks, months, whatever it is for him at Leicester, I do think he'd probably get another opportunity somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, following on to that, I think when you talk about the transfer activity, because obviously after losing Fofana, the thing is, for me personally, the Kasper Schmeichel sale, £1 million, it might have been a goodwill thing, because I think it goes down as a Leicester legend at this point. So maybe they say, thank you for everything. If you want to leave, there's the window for you to go. But I feel like they could have got a bit more than £1 million for him, especially considering, as you said, look, when you're losing a goalkeeper that is undoubtedly your number one, and no one else comes close. Danny Ward is not essentially ready to be number one. He may say so, of course, absolutely, but I would think as a goalkeeper, when you have not had any chance whatsoever of even staking a place for the first being number one at Leicester, for it to be suddenly be given to you just because Sir Michael's gone, no real competition, I think is an oversight on their part. That's the board's fault. And the Fofana sell, correct me if I'm wrong. Correct me, sorry, if I'm wrong. But didn't you guys see this coming? Because when Chelsea were linked with him, everything was indicating for him saying he wants to go. He's adamant that he wants to leave, regardless of what Leicester have done for him in terms of looking after him after the injury. He was very, very adamant that he wanted that move. He wants to play in Europe. He wants to play in the Champions League, more to the point. So is that an oversight by the board? I mean, away from Leicester, away from Rodgers, rather. Is the board now making things difficult for Leicester to improve? Tielemans in his last year, Maddison every day linked with a move away, which probably will happen probably next summer. Let me know what you guys think. Anyone can take the floor on this. Are they in big trouble?
I think it is probably a case of upstairs having a detrimental effect on what's going on the footballing side, because especially when you look at this summer, there has been so many, I guess you'd call it, changes of the goalposts. And you just have to look at Rodgers like, how can your manager go and approach players in the summer and then be told, no, you can't go for those players anymore? At a Premier League club, maybe you could expect it in the lower leagues where things fluctuate so frequently, but I just don't think that is on for a Premier League club. And I think it maybe oversight might be the right word, but I think they have been trying to tie down Tielemans for over a year now. So even in that case, you can say probably the writing's on the wall there. So you need to be thinking forward rather than thinking about, okay, how long can we just keep them? And then we'll just react to whatever happens. So I think they need probably a bit more joined up thinking, which I think they did have, or they have had over the past few years, but it just seems like they've lost their way a little bit. I'm not sure what Niall thinks.
Yeah, I think it's also a case in terms of Brendan. They've been hampered as well with injuries as well. And they've been really unfortunate there. I mean, we've seen where they've had to put in makeshift defences. And like they've played like midfielders in there. I know indeed he played at the back a couple of times and stuff like that now, and it kind of unravelled for him, where he hadn't had the opportunity to bolster the squad. And then when you get these injuries, it really exposes you. And look, no one more than us knows what it's like when you start playing midfielders in defence. What happens? It's an absolute disaster. But yeah, he's had to deal with a lot of that as well. And I suppose when you look back when they won the FA Cup and the emotion of that, and the sun was down, and what's happened with the ownership and stuff like that, and all that stuff that happened there, I mean, that's a tough weight to carry on a club and stuff like that. And Casper was a real surprise. I suppose afterwards it wasn't as much of a surprise because we've seen it happened with his father in the past, very, very similar. But I think with Casper, that was a real shock for me. Like, he was a real dressing room leader. He was a real guy that they could lean on. And when you lose your goalkeeper and you lose Fofana, that's absolutely massive. Like, two of their top players, arguably. And to lose him in the way that he did, and as you said, £1 million for a player of Kasper Schmeichel is peanuts, really. It's just it's kind of like it's kind of sad when you see, like, it was like the whole furore winning the FA Cup and the sun was there and they were celebrating and throwing them around and it meant so much to them. And then you see it dissolve down into this kind of where they're penny pinching now. They don't really have the money. They're trying to blend players in. They're trying to use players that are kind of by their sell-by date, and some players who want to check out and stuff like that. And there's a lot of players there at the moment now looking around at each other when things go astray and go wrong, and they're going, this ain't for me anymore. I think this has run its course. And that's a very tough place to be, and I'm sure we'll get into similar talk when we start talking about our own teams. Well, my team anyway. It'll be a similar picture being painted, don't worry.
Yeah. And now just to quickly finish off with you as well on this one. Let's talk about Bournemouth because they won the game. Now, ever since you spanked them 9-0, they've gone on to win 2 games and draw 3 in the last 5. So they found some form and they've climbed 8th in the table. So, I mean, have you got any words of praise for them? And I can ask it now, I guess. You probably know the answer, or we'll find out the answer later anyway. Sacking
Well,
Scott Parker.
the fact that they're above us says it all, doesn't it? Really,
Yeah, it
but
does, yeah.
but it was probably the worst thing in the world we could have done when you look back on it, because it gave us a sense of like, well, maybe we're kind of okay, kind of thing, and we can build on this. Here's the start of our season, and for them, it was probably the kick up the backside they needed to make the changes that they needed to make in order to push on. I mean, they have a collective group of players there, but in order to perform, they need them all performing collectively as a team at 100%. And as much as I kind of like Scotty, he's also dapper on the sideline as well, isn't he? In the way he dresses and everything and all. But you can't but not like him and stuff like that. But it's just, I think it was tough on them as well, coming up from the championship and stuff like that, and they didn't. We said on a number of podcasts that they didn't really invest in order to stay there at the time, but he was trying to get the best out of what he had, and he showed that he did have something there. And we were full of praise, obviously, for Stevie Cooper, of course, they've been signing players to beat the band like an NFL team nearly, and look at how that's worked out, So nothing but praise for Bournemouth. If there's any Bournemouth fans out there, I'm a Liverpool fan, they probably owe me a beer because we were the trigger to make the decision to push on. So yeah, nothing but praise from obviously one of our old boys in there, Solanke as well, who's a heck of a guy, really.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we'll move on from Bournemouth and Leicester. Congratulations to Bournemouth on the win, Leicester. In my opinion, I know I know what I think you should do, but we that trigger, do it. But that's just me. But
It
anyway,
wasn't you that said it.
it wasn't me. No. I just heard it from somewhere. But anyway, we move. We're gonna move on to let's go to your North London homies, your neighbours, the Spurs. You dealt with them last week. But they've come back into winning ways this week with a 1-0 win. Squeezed it out. Now, my question for you is this, and try and be as unbiased as possible. Their football has not been good this season, and they ran out of luck against you guys last week. They weren't really impressive this weekend, but they're scraping wins. Do you think they are good enough? And I mean that good enough to qualify for the top 4 this year. I'm not talking about the players they have because they got quality footballers, but with this football, is it sustainable? Do you think they'll get enough results in from you watching them?
It's really difficult to assess because I feel like throughout the weeks this season, you just feel like they can't play this badly and continue to get wins, let alone points, because we all know everyone can pick up a draw here or there, but they're actually winning games. And I think the fact that they are possibly pushes towards, yes, they can, because I feel like even last season, that 4th spot wasn't a guarantee for either Arsenal or Tottenham. It was very much, I think it was 2 points that separated them. And it was pretty much a shootout at the end, the last few weeks of the season. So I think even though they're not playing the most attractive football, they don't really have to. Because they have Kane, they have Son, who, although he's only really performed against Leicester this season, there will be a point where he switches it on consistently, I believe. And when Kulusevski gets back from injury as well, they have a proper front three. That's what Arsenal lacked last season. And I think you could see how important that was when it came down to it last year. So I think even though there are prettier ways to go about it, they still should be within a shout of getting top 4, even though I think a lot of people, myself included, will just be scratching their heads thinking, when is their luck going to run out? But when you just see how, I don't even know if you can call it luck when it happens this often, but they're just able to scrape a victory. And I think maybe that comes through their experience as well, because you've got to remember Harry Kane Heung-min Son. These guys are late 20s. And actually, Kane may be pushing 30. I'm not 100% sure, but they've been there and they've qualified for the Champions League consistently. Arsenal haven't, which is just a fact. And I think that's where probably that comes into play as well. Even though they're not playing the best football, the most attractive football, they can still grind out a result. And that's something I think, I know we'll touch on it a bit later, but Arsenal are only showing now that they are able to do that. So it'll be interesting. I think they will have to play better football as the season progresses. I think everyone would want to see that. But even if it carries on like this, I think they'll be in and amongst it because they haven't been dropping many points.
They haven't. No, that's true. Niall, Brighton. Now, obviously, they've got a new manager in as well. So Potter's now at Chelsea. Have you seen? I mean, I think it's their first loss in a couple of games, so they're in good form regardless. But after this game, did you see anything for them to worry about? And before we continue on that, also Enoch Wepu having to retire at such a young age, 24 years old. It's sad, but it could have been sadder. And I think that's the best way to say it because, God forbid, he played football and something happened on the pitch. You know, they found it out early. It's unfortunate he has to retire, but I'm sure the club will look after him. Brighton are a great club. But yes, back to the club as well. The football still is kind of the same. Did you see anything for them to worry about, or do you think they'll be fine?
No, I think Brighton will be fine. I've a lot of admiration for Brighton, and I was a huge fan of Graham Potter when he was there as manager. And I just think we did a preview for the game last week when they played us, and the talk was, "Oh, this manager's come in and he might have a way of playing and stuff like that, and he might change things." And I was there going, "He ain't going to change anything. They've quite a good setup there, quite a good winning formula, and every player on that pitch knows exactly what his job is." There's no sort of in between grey area with any of those players. They know exactly what to do. And with the likes of Gross and March and Trossard and players like that, and Welbeck, the way they set him up with Welbeck, one thing the manager may end up looking at is if you look at Welbeck, they set him up as a striker, but he's not really a striker. They use him as a decoy to pull those gaps open. And then the likes of Gross and Trossard and March and guys like that sail through those gaps, and they're the guys who gets the goal. But Danny Welbeck, his work kind of goes unnoticed. And he does some fantastic work in there and opening up those positions, dragging defenders all over the place. But the new manager may want to look at that. He may have a different expectation of his front man. And that might be something that he looks at. But I don't think they'll have any problems at all. I think Brighton are a fabulously run club. I think their fan base are excellent as well. They know exactly where they're at. They know what their expectation is. Potter's done a fantastic job. You even seen it last year, even when they were going through that poor run and people were questioning Graham Potter and all, he dampened it down and they found a way to get the job done. Yeah. I'm a big fan of Brighton and stuff like that. I like the way they go about their business at nearly every level. I don't think they've anything at all to worry about.
Excellent. Right. I think
Can I just say one more thing on that?
Yeah, go.
Like, it's a great point on Welbeck, and I think you'll agree, Kojo, as a Man United fan. I think he's someone who was really unlucky with injuries when he was at Arsenal. And you see, when he is available, he's someone who's very selfless. So he won't have the most astounding goal return that you'd expect normally from a centre forward. But I think the game at Man United especially sticks out to me. Like, the channel runs he makes are so good that it just allows others to play. And I think if he was playing in, say, the previous generation where it was a lot of 4-4-2, I think he's tailor-made for a two-man strike partnership. But I think that's probably a topic for another podcast. But I just wanted to say that because it was a great point by Niall on how they use Welbeck. And I think he's probably found the club where they utilize his strengths better than most would.
Yeah, no, and I agree with both of you. And the reason I agree with both of you is I think, firstly, players like him are really underappreciated. I think they look at Welbeck and whether they consider him a striker or a wide player, he's a forward, so they want to look at his numbers. in this generation, if your numbers are not big enough, you're not good enough. That's how players are judged these days. But I think what Brighton do, they appreciate his talent. They appreciate his ability. He was unlucky with injuries at Man United as well. I think that's a big part of why he left. Because when he played for Man United, he didn't have terrible games in terms of, yes, his goal return wasn't great. He didn't get many assists, but numbers are one thing. If you're able to help the side win in other ways, you're playing your role perfectly. And unfortunately, I think at the time, because United were trying to, I don't know what United are trying to build. United have been trying to build things for
It was the Van Gaal era.
Yeah,
I remember because I think he probably didn't, but I just remember left wing backs and wing backs were the thing for United at the time.
Yeah.
And he was not getting a sniff, and then Arsenal came in on deadline day. That's
Yeah,
all I
yeah.
remember. But yeah.
No, you're correct. I remember he brought in Luke Shaw. He wanted him to play on the left wing with Memphis Depay, a lot more of a lapping. Depay to be the more inside forward because he wanted some numbers as well. Welbeck unfortunately didn't have numbers for Van Gaal. But look, United have been. We'll get to United at some point. Let's not forget, but we'll get that at some point. We do the final game of Saturday to go through. Before I get to that one, Newcastle beat Brentford 5-1. I say beat; they absolutely destroyed them 5-1. Great performance. Newcastle look like they're in good form and they're getting a lot more confident. They play my team next weekend, so I'm looking forward to that. And we'll say Chelsea won 3-0 at home to Wolves. I think it was a quite comprehensive victory. Wolves are a bit of a yo-yo club in the Premier League, but they are still looking for a manager, so I think there's a lot more to work on there before we can get onto them and see what they're trying to do throughout the season. Chelsea have a good win. But we cannot go through this podcast without talking about the team that's top of the table. And a guy that's in October, now it's the 10th of October, he scored 20 goals already this season. Erling Haaland and Manchester City. Man City won 4-0 comprehensive win at home against Southampton. Niall, you've got them next week. Now, from experience and from very, 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 very recent experience, it's not fun playing this club. We will talk about your team later on in this podcast, but obviously, again, you guys didn't win this weekend. We'll talk about defensive performances. So the question is this: who is stopping Erling Haaland and apparently Phil Foden now as well? I mean, what's going on? How good were they?
Oh, they're just, it's terrible as a rival because when I use this season the word rival loosely, but as a rival in there, it's really it's hard to kind of hate on them, isn't it? Because you look at Erling Haaland in full stride and you see what he's trying to do and he's pointing to where he wants the ball. He's telling these players, he's telling Kevin De Bruyne where to put the ball from and stuff like that. Yeah. And it's just, you can only smile. You can only smile because he's just an absolute machine. I was slightly confident after the Community Shield. I thought we did a real good job on them there. Again, like the Bournemouth result was kind of like a false start, really. And I don't know what happened, but I don't know. It's I mean, he's absolutely brilliant, and he is going to break all records. There's no doubt about it. I don't know how you stop him. I'm hoping our big boy Ibu Kanate, I hope he can maybe do something between himself and Van Dijk. They can maybe tag team him or something like that. And I don't know, maybe you come out of that game losing, but if Haaland doesn't score, maybe you've achieved a little glimmer of something that you can take away maybe from it, But yeah, he's exceptional. He's a joy to watch. But again, what I would say to people, and especially Arsenal and stuff like that, no matter how many he scores, it's still 3 points every time. And that's where the focus has to be. There's no doubt he's probably going to win the Golden Boot. I mean, they should just send it to him now, unless he gets injured. And I don't see that happening either because he's so clever now in his play. I read something there the other day. What does he take? Something like 18 or 20 touches in a game. Yeah. He just comes alive and he just knows where to be. He scores goals from both feet, from his head. He's so powerful. Yeah, and I don't really want to be podcasting next weekend, really. That's how I feel about it, to be honest. I can't say any more than that. I mean, Southampton as well. I mean, you got to feel for any team they come up against. I mean, it's just... do you know what I did? I noticed it the other day. He went in and he made the changes. He made the substitutions, which to me is just, it's borderline nearly insulting at times, And the camera goes to their bench and the guys are wrapping up after playing and stuff like that, putting in a shift. None of them are really sweating. They haven't broke a sweat. Yeah. And I'm looking along, the camera's just going along, and I think Foden was there, De Bruyne was there, Gundogan was there. And you're just there going, this is ridiculous. This is just ridiculous on every level. But I think it's part of Liverpool's problem as well, and we'll get onto it later. I think trying to hang with that team for the last 5 years has been mental and fatiguing torture. But they're a joy to watch. They're an absolute joy to watch.
Yeah, they're really good. And Haaland, for me, I love strikers. And when I say I love strikers that are just hungry for goals. He made a statement earlier this season where he pretty much said, I don't care about how many touches I get. If I can get 5 touches and that means 5 goals, I've done my job. And that's exactly what you're supposed to do as a striker. So I've missed the throwback. But I want to go away from Haaland for 1 second. Now, in this country, correct me if I'm wrong, in this country, when we talk about greatest midfielders of all time, they've always gone to the English three of Gerrard, Lampard, and Scholes. And that means your people like your Vieiras have been out of the discussion, for example, despite being just as good, maybe sometimes for people even better than some of those three, or if not all of them. In this country now, with the right back discussion, it tends to be Trent Alexander-Arnold versus Reece James. But I feel like there's one more fullback, because he can play left or right, that's being left out every time, and it's João Cancelo.
Yes.
So before I like to wax lyrical on him, I feel like if he had the right back spot, Zinchenko would have stayed at City, because Zinchenko's good. He's really good. But because Cancelo is such a weapon on the left side as well, how good is that guy? Because he not only did he score, he was assisting, he was trying to create chances in different styles. Just how good is that boy? And, what a player they've got.
He's so good. I think what really sets him apart, and a few other fullbacks I know. So I talk about this a lot in terms of Takehiro Tomiyasu, his ability to play off both feet. And I think what makes Cancelo even better is not only is he able to play off both feet, but he actually has close control and can dribble, can move it into really tight pockets in advanced areas and just exploit people. And I think we saw that for his goal on the weekend. And when you have someone who's able to play like a winger that is actually a fullback and can defend well too, you just have someone who's pretty much a Swiss Army knife, can do anything and do it at such high level. You're looking at someone who's playing in probably the most important position in a modern football team and doing it to the best ability of anyone in the league. And I don't think you're going to be able to stop someone like that. And you do mention Zinchenko, who I think is one of those players who you actually realize how good they are when you see them in the flesh. Sometimes I think you can just be, not that the TV is a bad way to watch football, because that's how most people watch football, but when you're actually in the stadium, you see the little movements that players might do just before they receive the ball and little things like that. Zinchenko is so good, say when he's about to receive the ball and he does a little shimmy and he just buys himself an extra yard. I can't remember the last time I watched Cancelo in the flesh, but I'd imagine he's like that to the extreme. And to be so both-footed, I think obviously it probably factors into his youth club as well, Benfica, how they raise their players. You see Ruben Diaz, although he's a centre-back, he's quite similar as well. And I think how that production line is run, you see how many quality players come through that academy. And it's not a surprise that Pep Guardiola went straight for him. So yeah, I think he's another one where you see everyone's going to talk about Haaland pretty much every week. Then Kevin De Bruyne is going to be the second one on that list. But I think Cancelo is one where he may, under the radar, is very, I want to use that very lightly because it's Man City, but he's probably the one that should be getting as much love as the others because of the positions that he's able to play and the kind of the capacity that he has in both sides.
Yeah. It's very, for me, it's very rare that I get things right in football in terms of prediction of how good I think footballers are going to be, because when Juventus did that swap deal with Danilo, I was absolutely fuming. And I didn't really say much on the socials because last time I said someone was going to be really good, they weren't good for their club and they're not here anymore. And that's Eric Lamela. So we move on. But what a player he is. Let's move on to Sunday. We'll go into the two last games of the day. But beforehand, West Ham won 3-1 at home to Fulham. Andres Pereira with a lovely goal. Skamaka scored for West Ham as well, bowling from the penalty spot. Andres Pereira went from hero to zero, as they like to say, with stupidity within the penalty box. And then Antonio. Now, Crystal Palace beat Leeds 2-1, comeback win. Edouard and Eddie with the goals. I think it was Pascal Struijk with the goal for Leeds. Now, I'm going to go into the Man United game. Now, before I go to the Man United game, I just want to address this really quickly. Skamaka, for his goal, it hit his hand unintentionally, but it hit his hands before it hit into the back of the net. That's number one. Antonio, deflections and all, when he was trying to win the ball hit both his arms, and he stormed towards, got a bit of luck afterwards, scored the goal was given. Marcus Rashford got very lucky, hit his hand unintentionally, goal was disallowed. At some point, I need someone to give me one strict rule for the handball rule and keep it there, because it's getting ridiculous. The thing is, I can't...
really? Don't even get me started.
Don't worry about that. But for me, it's just a little quick rant because, I've got to the point of where it's like, I can't blame one referee because no referee kind of gets it consistent. I mean, that means in their role, no one really knows what it is. Whether it's the guy behind the camera for VAR that week at one game or the guy on the pitch, there's always confusion because there's no set rule. So at some point, we need one set rule because every year the rule changes for whether it's for goals or penalties. There's always something different. But I digress. Everton 1, Manchester United 2. Now, might I say, after losing 6-3, this is lovely. To get a win that made me nervous because Alex Iwobi is not a goal scorer, yet he's got a beautiful goal, might I add. But it was good to see United win. But we'll ask you guys first before I go off and finish on United. Niall, you are a big rival of Man United, but looking at Ten Hag and his ideas so far, do you see United improving in terms of, do you see them slowly getting into what he's trying to build at the club?
Yeah, I mean, you can see at the moment he's kind of playing in a way that's not necessarily his way yet because he hasn't got all the tools in place yet to really put out there what he wants to do. I think it'll still take another window or two before he has that kind of setup that he wants to be able to launch that kind of play that he wants to play. At the moment, it's probably, I would say, a little frustrating for him because he knows how he wants to play. He's trying to put it across to the players how he wants to play. But he has to hold back a little bit on what he wants to do because just the personnel isn't there yet in terms of carrying out what he wants to do. There has been obviously huge improvement. I think Malacia has come in and I think he's been generally really good. I mean, I wouldn't take anything out of the City game because City slap up most teams each week. And I think it's a difficult one as well because I think he went out there and he's learning on the job as well in terms of the Premier League and the standard that it's at and the intensity and the battle that goes on every week was not something that he might have experienced at Ajax in the Dutch league. And I think last week, I think, was a wake-up call for him as much as it was for Man United. This week, I think much better. A very tough place to go, Goodison, and especially on a Sunday evening with that weird kind of kick-off time and stuff like that. It was a decent performance. but I think he has so much more to give. But I think as Man United fans, I think you can probably see where he's going with it and where he wants to get to. It just needs a little bit more personnel and some sorting out. But very impressive so far.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and Art. Following on that, he obviously now mentioned about the style of football not being ready to be 100% implemented. But a player that he likes is Antony Martial. He got an assist in the game, but again, he's injured. Now, Arteta, I'll compare it to Arteta because Arteta obviously had a lot more time. Now I can do the same after Art if you want with Klopp and the players he brought in eventually. Do you sometimes? I mean, you had Lacazette, for example, and I think he wasn't always the most fit or the most consistent anyway. When you look at Anthony Martial, do you think it's a game of patience, considering he's got a new manager, or considering the time he's been at the club, the amount of injuries he keeps getting, which happens in football, but it's unfortunate. And he's not really the most consistent footballer. Hasn't really shown that. What is the, from the outside looking in, what is the thing with him? Do you think it's going to get to a point where United have to cut ties because he's got ability? We all see that, but if you're not available, are you really part of the plan?
It's interesting you bring up Lacazette because I feel so. Last year was probably the one where everybody realised he was more of a hindrance to Arsenal than a help. He only scored 4 goals in the league and 2 were penalties. Gabriel Jesus has already scored more league goals in total than that this season and has also transformed the way Arsenal attack. He's not obviously a carbon copy of what Lacazette is or was. But I think what you have to remember from an Arsenal perspective is Gabriel Jesus is Mikel Arteta's first signing as a striker after 2.5 years. So you kind of see how long he had to wait to bring in a striker that had the qualities that kind of blend between what Lacazette had in terms of link-up play and being able to hold up the ball and drop deep, and then Aubameyang, who was obviously more of a final third striker, goal-getter, who could actually move about a bit. So with looking at it from that perspective, I feel like there may be a case for almost cutting ties and finding someone just fresh, almost looking at it like that Brendan Rodgers situation of a change of scenery. But I think where you probably would offer Martial more slack is he's much younger. He is still having an impact on that United team when he comes on, obviously with the assist last night and his other performances off the bench. And then you look at how he did in pre-season as well, and everyone thought it was Martial's season again. And honestly, I feel like it's probably a case of just being patient, at least for this year, because maybe, and I think if you want to look at it through a comparison, maybe look at Emile Smith-Rowe at Arsenal, who won't be available until after the World Cup because he's had to undergo surgery for a groin issue. But we all know how good he is and how unique he is. And I think that's quite similar with Martial because Rashford's not the same type of striker as him. I don't think Rashford plays the ball in for Antony like Martial did yesterday, for instance. If you want someone who has that connection, I think you maybe wait it out and see how he does maybe in the second half of the season. Just be patient with him at this point and just try to maximize his abilities as best you can in the second half of the season, because we all know there's a player there still. I know it's year 7 of Project Martial, but I think it's probably not worth kind of thinking too far ahead right now with him, because you can see when he's available, he's still having a positive impact on that team.
Niall, is there anything for you to follow on Martial? Do you have like a similar story of a Liverpool player who you think maybe had maybe a bit too much time, or the patience was well deserved?
I think if you look at similar to Joel Matip, who was very injury prone and stuff like that, and I think last year through sports science and stuff like that, they went through a lot of stuff with him, and kind of with bringing in Konate as well. We were able to bring him in when we needed to, but protect him when we needed to as well. And he had one of his best seasons last season in terms of the amount of games he played and minutes and stuff like that, and his performance level. And I think if you could figure out something with Martial and try and get to the crux or the issue of what it is, or if they can solve it, like he's a player who annoys me so much because he's so good when he's on his game. You seen it last week when he came on and stuff like that. He just has a way about him, and he has a kind of an instinct of arriving in the right place at the right time. And but if he just smile a little bit, he's just a miserable fecker, isn't he? Like he doesn't look like he enjoys football at all. He goes onto the pitch and it's like it's the last place he wants to be. And you could imagine him nearly in training as well. People trying to enjoy their training, and you might be paired up with him in a group for some training sessions, stuff like that. And you go, oh Jesus, this guy, you know what I mean? Let's have a bit of fun here, you know what I mean? And it's kind of like, but yeah, he's one of those things. He's so much talent and so much to offer, and if you could just get him in, it's kind of like nearly like Eric Boye, isn't it? Eric Boye is a sensational defender. He's so athletic in the way he can do stuff as well, and when he's on his day, he's unbelievable when he's fit and stuff like that and all. But you just can't keep him fit, otherwise he'd be unbelievable. And but yeah, even I suppose for Martial as well, even if you could convince him in such a way, and I know he's not always happy when you discuss this with him about being kind of that impact player as well, where you bring him on with 25 minutes to go or 30 minutes to go or something like that. He'll go out there, he'll do a job for you. He's a great option even to have on a bench. You know what I mean? You think about it, if you go out to replace him now, and you look at him being on the top of his game and the talent that he brings, you're going to have to spend serious money to replace that when it's there. And again, there's no guarantee and consistency as well, because any player can get injured. But like Art said, I think you have to stick with him. I think you have to stick with him. I think it's different. It just feels different when he's on the pitch for Man United. I don't know if you feel the same, Coach. It's just when he comes on, there's a kind of an excitement as well as a concern about whether he'll see it out. But there's an excitement there in terms of the things he does and the goals he scores, and yeah, I think he's exceptional when he's on his day.
Yeah, I think to answer your question, I don't really have the patience right now anymore, because the thing for me was last year he obviously wanted to leave. Like, he really wanted to leave the club for whatever reason. Obviously, Oli and Rannick, he didn't go well at United at all. But he wanted to leave, and he went on to Sevilla. And for me, that was like a redemption thing for him, where it's like, okay, forget about Man United Football Club. Go and work on your game. Enjoy some more minutes, consistent minutes, and hopefully, even if it means not at Man United, I also think you're a very, very good footballer. If it works out somewhere, as a football fan, it would be great to see an informed Martial on a consistent basis. But as a United fan, as much as I would love for him to be part of this project, if you are not available on a consistent basis, I can't have you there. The Everton game frustrated me because he started the game so well. He was there for the link-ups. He was there to win the ball with his back to goal, or maybe drive at the defense. The goal we scored, he was already on his back. He turned straight away to get the ball, played in Antony. Nice pass, good weight, and a good finish from Antony after that. And then 5 minutes later, he's limping again. And it's like, injuries are an unfortunate part of the game. Sometimes you can't help it. I mean, we all sit here wishing that R9 had never got injured as many times as he did, because he would have been phenomenal. Oh, it would have been. He is phenomenal, but he would have been even more phenomenal. But with Martial, even if you're not part of that class, the fact that you're a good footballer is enough for us to want to watch you a lot more. And I don't want him to be in that discussion of what if he didn't get injured, like Diaby, for example. Diaby was such a good footballer, and if he didn't get injured so much and have to retire so soon, who knows what kind of player we would have witnessed in the Premier League, and maybe even more. Maybe we've gone to Madrid or something. So that's where I stand on him. But back to the game. There was someone else that scored in that game. Someone else who is also an I'll use your term with Lacazette. Is he a help or is he a hindrance? Cristiano Ronaldo. Now, Man United fans are very, very split on this. I know which side I'm on, and that's the side that I think he's still a help. I'm not saying he has to be a consistent starter, but when you've got a player of that quality who knows how to hit the fan in the back of the net, you've got to find a way to use him. And you know, in my opinion, if Ten Hag can get a load of goals from Haller, who's not the biggest presser of either, I think he can get a lot of goals from Cristiano Ronaldo. But Ronaldo, 700th club career goal, another milestone for him, an incredible milestone. So congratulations to him. Martial's injured. Does he start next game? Is he a help or is he a hindrance for you? Outside looking in, is it time for United to just say, "Yep, cut the ties, don't give him another contract after the summer," or do you think he still has it in the bag?
I honestly thought we were going to talk about Alex Iwobi. I've been waiting for Alex Iwobi talk. But in terms of Ronaldo, to be fair, I think when you look at Martial getting injured, obviously he started the Europa League game in Cyprus as well. I think it just looks like a really weird situation throughout the whole season, really, where you almost have someone as a hostage. And I don't think that really works for anyone. So it's almost like that situation we talked about earlier in terms of Schmeichel, for just almost like a well-being standpoint. Cutting ties is probably best for everyone at some point. But I think for now, you'd have to use him because I just don't see another option that's as reliable. Yes, we know what his pitfalls are in terms of the off the ball work and that side of the game. But I think if you look at it from what he does provide, it's reliability in front of goal. And I know he has had chances that he's missed this season, and obviously in the Europa League the other night where he hit the post. But I think if you're looking at Manchester United right now, what is going to kill you if you're someone who's in that race for top four, even Europa League, is getting too many draws. And he's someone who he turns draws into wins, he turns losses into draws. And I think if you look at that, you've got to utilize it somehow.
Yeah. Now, Ronaldo, I mean,
yeah, I always much prefer when he's not on the team sheet, just put it that way. But I just think, yeah, again, another fantastic option. I mean, and I know it's like we call it an option, and everyone knows the 500,000 a week and all this kind of thing, and the branding and everything goes with it. And if it's not going right and he's not happy, the disruption it caused, we know that he had his agent pimping him out to every team under the sun, and as you said, a hostage with no one who's willing to pay that ransom, and that's really the problem with him, really. But he's look, again, as Art said, if you're 1-1 with 25 minutes to go or 30 minutes to go, he's the guy who'll go on there and maybe make it happen for you and turn that point into 3 points, which could be vital at the end of the season. I'm sure it didn't sit well with him having to play Thursday night football. I'm sure it didn't at all. I'm sure it chokes him up having to do that kind of stuff. But I'm sure he should recognise as well at this stage in his career as well where he's at. And also to have him around, if you can get him motivated and energized in a way, because you've a lot of young players in there who are very impressionable at the moment and stuff like that, they should be, I mean, the likes of Sancho and all should be absolutely Velcro to him in terms of learning his trade, in terms of that kind of play and stuff like that. And I just think sometimes he brings a lot more than sometimes what the fan base sees and stuff like that. And they tend to see someone who's kind of disgruntled or fed up or, you know, not happy, or he's on a bench. Look, if he's on a bench and he doesn't look like he's happy, isn't that a good sign? Because it means he wants to play.
Yeah.
But I don't know whether, as we said earlier, when you do get all the pieces of the jigsaw in place, and Ten Hag isn't playing his system that he wants to play, I'm not sure whether Ronaldo fits into that system, and then a decision will have to be made.
Yeah, I agree with that. It will be. Oh,
It's time.
it's time. No, you know what? To be fair to him, look, I think Everton started the season, I think, indifferently, but before this game, they had been unbeaten in 6. And it looks like Iwobi has sort of found his role in sort of like a almost central midfielder type kind of role for Everton. Have you, from your point of view anyway, he's got a lovely goal on the weekend, but just in general, have you seen an improvement in the player that left Arsenal Football Club?
I want to phrase this right. I'd say yes, but that player's always been there, I feel. I feel he's been misused for most of his career, even at Arsenal, because he's never been the quickest player. He's obviously someone who started out on the wings in first team football, but at youth level, he would quite often go inside, play as a 10 at times, and he's always had that close control. Very skillful player, always. Not the best, but has always been comfortable in those areas. And I think that everyone, well, maybe not everyone, but a lot of people were screaming for him to be used in a central area for ages, because you'd see it all the time, specifically at Arsenal and probably early on when he was at Everton. He could beat a man, but his final ball wasn't necessarily the best thing in the world. That would always be what people would criticize him about, and his finishing. Because there was, I don't know if you guys remember or had even seen it before, but he used to be quite vocal on Snapchat, and he did this post about no side foot, just laces kind of thing. And every time he'd just hit it straight at the keeper, everyone would bring that up. It's so funny. But I think what we've seen is just a manager who's seen that, yes, he may be useful out wide, but he's not necessarily, that's not his best position. And you can see his attributes suit that central role a lot more, because he's obviously not the best passer in the world, but he has an eye for a decent enough pass. And he also has a decent engine as well. And then he has the tight, close control to actually deal with those situations. So I think a lot of Arsenal fans and probably fans of the Nigerian national team as well I feel like a lot of people have been waiting for him to be moved inside. And it's quite interesting that Frank Lampard's the manager that actually did it, because I feel you look back to, I think it was in lockdown, Ancelotti was playing him as a right wing back, and yes, he'll do it. He'll do the right wing back job, but I don't feel like that's his best position. It doesn't suit his attributes best. So it's quite nice to see that he is flourishing in a central midfield role, and it's not just been this season. Lampard actually started to use him there at the back end of last season, where he was having a decent time, even though Everton weren't getting results. So it's just good to see that he's getting a consistent run there, and finally he's not using his side foot when finishing. So yeah, I'm not sure what you guys think, but yeah, it feels like it's been a long time coming with him.
Niall, anything on it will be?
Yeah, no, I echo what Art is saying there. I just think as well, as you said, with Lampard being in there as well. I mean, if anyone's going to find a way to move a guy like that inside, Frank is the guy to do it, really, isn't it? I like his physicality as well. I like the way he gets like stuck into the game and stuff like that. His close control, as you said, and stuff. But I like the way he breaks up the play as well, and sometimes it goes a little bit unnoticed. But yeah, he's a big physical guy, isn't he? He's not the guy sometimes you want to be matching up to at times, you know. But yeah, hats off to Frank.
Yeah, no, he's doing well so far, and I think if there's anything I could add from it, I think the one thing that I've always liked about Iwobi is that I don't think he's ever lacked confidence. I don't think anyone's ever been able to shake him. I know when he came through the ranks at Arsenal, it went from promising young player to fans getting a bit frustrated because they didn't see the improvement in him. But every time he steps onto the pitch, it looks like he's trying things. And I think that's the most you can ask from a footballer. You know, even in their best or worst times, rather, the fact that they're trying things, you can at least praise that. The fact that they're trying to do things and make things happen. And I think that kind of footballer to try and make things happen. And Everton have needed that for a while. I mean, I'm very critical. I don't think they've had that since like Steven Pienaar, let alone anyone else. So, you know, if he's going to be that kind of player for them, absolutely. Now, it's one more game to talk about.
Is that the end of the show, no? Pretty much.
Believe me now, praising Arsenal is not the best part of my day, but here we are. But no, Arsenal with a 3-2 win at home against Liverpool Football Club. A well-deserved win as well, but a game also with a lot of some controversies and, you know, things we'll get into. So, firstly, Art, since you won the game, I think we'll go to you first. I think that's fair. How impressed were you with the performance, considering, you know, you went ahead, they leveled, you went ahead again, they leveled again. It seems like Arsenal are now finding ways to win, even when they're pulled back a little bit.
Yeah, it was very impressive because I think we've seen a lot of these aspects of their play throughout the season, but everybody, almost the stick everyone's been beating Arsenal with is, can they do that against a top 6 side? And I think not just the Liverpool game, but the Tottenham game also showed that they can. It was almost an amalgamation of all the good work they've been doing this season. So being able to start games quickly, I believe they've scored 9 goals in the opening half an hour of games, which is the most in the Premier League this season. And they also haven't conceded in the first half an hour of a game this season. So obviously Martinelli scoring within a minute is probably the prime example of a fast start, but it's something that they've been doing throughout the season. And then being able to respond to adversity is the way I'd put it in terms of responding after conceding a goal. They've also been doing that on a fairly consistent basis throughout the season. So I believe in August, obviously they beat Leicester 4-2, and after both of Leicester's goals, they scored after about 2 or 3 minutes, and then against Aston Villa as well, a 2-1 win. Villa equalised to make it 1-1, and then within 2-3 minutes again, it's 2-1 to Arsenal. Martinelli scored. So I think those are two kind of aspects that have been present throughout the year. It's just really nice to see that they had the belief that they could take that into a game against Liverpool, because I think even if Liverpool haven't had the best start of the season, it's still very much a mental kind of barrier Arsenal have had in recent years, I believe, where even if you look at last season, they have probably good spells against Liverpool. If you think to the home game at the Emirates in the league, it was 0-0 at half time, and Arsenal had a decent first half, but then Liverpool switch it on and they just couldn't deal with it. I feel like you just saw over the course of 90 minutes, yes, Liverpool had really good spells, especially in the first half, but I think you just saw a much more confident and composed Arsenal team, which is what probably impressed me the most, aside from the result and the overall performance and what happened on the pitch. I think it was more of, I guess, a shift in mentality that I was impressed by.
And following on from that, I think the next question would be, I mean, obviously there's a lot of players that are impressed for you this season. Ben White's doing well right back. Zinchenko, Antony both doing the job at left back as well. Saliba's been brilliant for you guys, I must say. Gabriel Jesus, as you know, Martinelli is looking fantastic on that left side. But there's one player that he looks like a different man to me. And it could be because he's playing a role that he plays similar for his country, and that's Granit Xhaka. You talked about composure. Now, that's someone that has notoriously lacked composure in recent years. But just how key has he proven to Arsenal this season in terms of his improvement and his role in the center of the pitch?
He's another interesting one because I feel like similar to what's happened with Iwobi at Everton, it's been a change that started at the back end of last year. So people will think it's a total kind of revolution from this year. But if you think to around March time, that's when Arteta first started kind of using him in a more advanced position or zone, if you want to call it that, because it's a bit easier. And I think what you're seeing is someone who, one, is confident, two, is probably, even though Martin Odegaard has the armband, is Xhaka is probably the number one leader in that dressing room. He just doesn't have the armband. And also, you're actually seeing his technical attributes in their best form, because he's getting into areas where he's free a lot of the time because he just won't be tracked. Arsenal, a lot of the time now, have 5 players going into that final third through the kind of right wing, right half space, through the centre. And then on the left side, it's just a bunch of rotations between Jesus, Martinelli, and Xhaka. And one of them is always going to be free because there's just so much going on. So you'll see, I think it happened a lot in the second half where he'd just find himself getting the ball slid into him and he's free to cut it across goal. That's something where it could either lead to a goal for him or a goal for someone else. I think Jesus scored a goal from that earlier in the season against Aston Villa. But then also, if a team decide to sit back and give him space, he's got one of the best left foots in the league, I feel, in terms of just technical ability. And you see he can pick out a really nice kind of chipped ball over the top of the defense. So I think what we're seeing now is another player who's just having his best attributes highlighted rather than having to do so many jobs in one position. Because if you look at how he was used by Arsene Wenger and more so Unai Emery, he was at the base of midfield having to cover so much ground, and he's not an agile player. He's not a quick player. So when you're in those positions, you may make rash decisions. I think when Arteta first came in, he used him more as a kind of, I guess you call it a quarterback in a double pivot. So again, he was a lot more reserved, but he was still much deeper on the pitch. So he was distributing balls over the top a lot to whoever's playing left back. But now you're actually seeing what he can do in more advanced areas, and I think it's really nice because we all know how his arc has been at Arsenal, and you're seeing someone who's just confident now in not just their game, but how they're received by not just players but fans alike, and it's quite good to see.
I'll ask now. I've got some questions I will ask both of you, so I'm going to ask you now. Firstly, your ambitions for the season, because I don't know if, for me personally, I think I could say that you're in a title race. I know it's very early. It's early, and we know what City are doing. We know what City are doing, more so Haaland. But look, you are second. You are second place.
First.
You are. Oh, you know you're first, aren't you?
No, Arsenal top, yeah.
Yeah, you are top. Yeah, because you won. Obviously, City won on Saturday. You won on Sunday.
Yeah.
But, man. But no, you are first, and deservedly so. And the way you're playing your football, you said it. You're confident. You're a lot more assured on the ball. Everyone knows their role. You said Xhaka, obviously, and that might account for all other players as well. Their qualities are being brought to the table through the way you play. What are, if forget about the club, your personal ambitions for the club, and then the last two, Gabriel, was it a penalty? Gabriel, was it a handball?
All right, so do you mean Gabriel Jesus for the first one?
Penalty, yep, and then
okay,
Gabriel.
cool. So my personal ambitions are still top 4. That is the minimum requirement going. That was my minimum requirement going into the season, and I don't think that will change until maybe sometime in the second half of the year where you can reassess, because now this period of the year is just about point accumulation. That is all this year, all this time of year is about. It doesn't matter where you are because it can change in 2 weeks. So I just think get as many points as possible and then see where you are, say in January, February, March. Then you can properly start targeting if you want to say something, the words that you said, but I'm not going to say because I don't. Yeah, so that's kind of my ambitions. My ambitions are still top 4 for now. And I'm confident that those ambitions would be met at the minute. Then Gabriel Jesus, I feel like it was a soft penalty, a really soft penalty. But if you look at it, how is he meant to keep balance when he gets that knock? And then Gabriel Magalhaes for the handball.
Natural arm position.
Yeah. Oh wow, that's a more difficult one. I feel like I just don't know what he's supposed to do.
I went straight onto Wikipedia and I looked up the word proximity. What does proximity mean? What does it actually mean? What's my proximity and your proximity and Kojo's proximity? What does that mean? And what's Michael Oliver's proximity? I don't know. As you said, we need a clear indication on this. We thought VAR coming in would clear all this stuff up. I think they're going to have to get to a stage. If a ball hits an arm or a hand, it's done. It's a handball, and that's it. And they can't keep on going on with this proximity thing. It's just it's crazy and it's frustrating.
Yeah, I think that's the thing because 2 seasons, so lockdown season, that would have been a penalty. And then since then, they've blurred the lines to a point where it's subjective when it shouldn't be. So I think when basically, if I'm looking for a solution, is it intentional? And can he move his arm out of the way? Maybe those are the 2 solutions for it. I don't know if there's any other way to kind of figure that out. But to kind of just draw a line, I think that those 2 factors may help. I don't know what you guys think.
No?
No, I just think it's such a difficult one. But the funny thing about yesterday was I didn't dwell on it because I thought we went out in the second half and we got that equaliser, and then I think we just coiled up and Arsenal just came at us wave after wave after wave. And in reality, Arsenal could have scored another 2 or 3, really, when you look at how they attacked in that second half and stuff like that. And I just think from our point of view as well, every week you have a lot of players looking around at each other on the pitch and stuff like that. And to me, it's not necessarily a defensive thing. There's obviously issues in midfield. There's obviously issues up front, but it's collectively there's a whole issue there at the moment. And I just think it's so strange. It's like as if we've operated in this whole team bubble for the last 4 or 5 years, and that bubble has now been burst in some way. And there's a lot of people looking at each other. There's a lot of finger pointing going on. There's a lot of stupid stuff that wouldn't have been there before. But I just think it's every week we're just looking. It's another decision. It's another ref. It's another VAR decision. It's another something or other, and it's just. Sometimes you got to get on with it, don't you? You got to look at yourself. You got to train hard. You got to come back and you got to try and find some sort of confidence and some sort of performance, and don't keep on dwelling on those things and feeling sorry for yourself going home on a coach thinking, we should have had that penalty and that other one was a soft one, and you're making excuses for poor performance, and some of those excuses can be valid. They can be valid. But I think if we dwell on those things and we sit on those things, I think it's a very difficult circle that we're going to find ourselves to try and get out of. And I looked at I don't know if you boys caught Jurgen Klopp's interview with Jan Ange Fjortoft after the game.
Right.
That man to me looks nearly sick. He looks ill. He looks like he has the weight of the world on his shoulders. He looks shriveled. He's lost so much weight. He just looks void of any ideas. He looks void of understanding. He keeps on talking about playing in between the spaces and all this kind of stuff. And it's kind of the same drum as bed every week and stuff like that. But he just looks a broken man. And he's the guy who's been, I've often described Liverpool as being a collective bunch of really, really good players, but that Jurgen Klopp is really the superstar. That any of those players can be replaced, but trying to replace him is going to be so difficult. So he's the superstar. And if he's rolling out that way where he's so beat down and disappointed and jaded from it and stuff like that, that has to go down through the squad as well, because he's the guy who they all look to. You know, he's the guy who runs out and pumps his fists and hugs players and does all that kind of stuff. I can't remember the last time I seen him smile. He looks like it's as if he signed the contract extension and he's now thinking maybe I shouldn't have. And that wave of fans and the Liverpool love and the cultural stuff and everything and the bond between him and Henderson and the journey they all went on and stuff like that. It's a difficult one, you know, and it's a hard one. It's a hard one to take. The drop off has been monumental. And there's so many different things going on there at the moment. I could list 20 things that I think collectively are leading to what we're seeing in front of us visually. And it's a real struggle at the moment. Players just a lot of looking around. You seen it yesterday with Thiago, looking around, players going by him, not tracking back as much as he should, and that's symptomatic throughout the team. You've Virgil van Dijk there at the back. I don't know whether he's kind of one mind on the World Cup and he's being really, really careful. The aura is kind of gone, but you don't see him talking to his back line. He's not marshalling his back line. We were a team at one stage going out on the pitch with a lot of captains. You know, everyone had a go. Everyone was marshalling everyone else. Everyone was sure that everyone was turned on. We go out onto the pitch now. Look at yesterday. Martinelli, first minute. And I did a preview last week. And a number of Arsenal fans asked me, so who do you think is the threat? You know, Martinelli, Jesus, Saka and all that. I said, Martin Odegaard is the one to watch because no one talks about him. No one talks about Martin Odegaard. They talk about everyone else because he's the quiet guy who just kind of gets on with it. And lo and behold, first minute steps up, splits the defence with a pass, Martinelli 1-0. And I went, oh my God, I could foresee it. And people just drop off. And this is, in similar respects, when you look at Arsenal at the moment, they're very similar to what Liverpool was doing back then in terms of creating that chaos in the defence. And you don't know who's going to come onto the ball from deep, who's going to run in there, switching the play, the stuff that Mane and Firmino and Salah did so often and stuff like that to create that craziness and out pops a goal and stuff like that. And it's frustrating, really, really frustrating at the moment.
Let me ask the question then. I mean, it's very easy to ask what's going wrong. I mean, you've obviously detailed a lot of what's going wrong at Liverpool right now, but just on the game itself, you know, I do want to discuss that first goal because that kind of highlights a big issue of what's happening in Liverpool right now. You mentioned Van Dijk and the style of defending. I feel like you've conceded a lot of goals this season which are avoidable, and in the sense of, yes, you know, teams will concede goals. Sometimes you'll make mistakes, but a lot of the goals that Liverpool are conceding this season, a lot of them are, for me, in instances where the defenders have just been very, very lazy, in my opinion, you know, or players
switched off.
Exactly, players in defensive positions. You know, the first goal, Saka gets the ball on the right, and Van Dijk's his body position is almost back towards Saka. So whether he goes right or left, you haven't got much control of that. But I feel like in that situation, you have to get a bit more closer so you don't give him the option to find the pass. Odegaard's found in the middle as well. And then on the right-hand side, where you conceded a lot of goals. Now, the job of Henderson used to be to cover Trent when Trent goes forward. I think that's what Jurgen Klopp detailed in his press conference last week when he kind of went on a defensive about him. But I ask you the question. One, is Van Dijk just running out of steam now? Is it a thing where maybe the injuries have just... I mean, he suffered one huge injury, so maybe it's starting to be a detriment to his ability. And then number two, despite how good he is going forward, Trent Alexander-Arnold, has it come to the point where defensively he's just become too much of a liability that you may have to maybe not... Drop him is the wrong word because I think he's fantastic. You don't drop a player of that quality, but maybe change his role, maybe change the system to suit him more. what is happening in that back line? Because Matip's not looking the same. Joe Gomez he's had a lot of injuries anyway, but every time he's come in, he's not looked good. What is going on?
Well, I mean, the biggest thing, and I think Van Dijk spoke about it yesterday as well in an interview, confidence is a huge thing in that team. We used to go out onto the pitch and we would be confident at any stage that back line would do what it tends to need to do. The interesting dynamic when you look at it as well, when you look at the right-hand side to the left-hand side, we don't get as toasted on the left-hand side if you look at it. They don't tend to come down that way, so they target the right-hand side. Part of the reason they target the right-hand side is not necessarily just Trent's defensive capabilities. What you've seen in the past is most of our attacking play at times prior to Luis Diaz and stuff was that combination between Trent and Henderson and Salah. That triangle of play there and that overlapping play that we used to play used to cut teams apart and lead to goals. So not only was it just Trent's defensive duties and stuff like that they target, they're also trying to kind of cut the head off Salah, if you like, as well. And it's been really, really effective. I mean, if you've seen it yesterday, I mean, would you have even known that Mo Salah was on the pitch yesterday?
Yeah.
I mean, he really wasn't there and he got hooked. But you're seeing again now, also because of confidence, when they're playing in the game, it's so energy absorbing. They're pushing out so much energy, trying to do the simple things that they used to do in terms of link up play and passing and stuff like that. They're taking an extra touch. They're dwelling on the ball, and they're questioning themselves. If you look at Virgil himself, I mean, him himself as well, he's often stood off players that way and he tries to get you. He has a huge wealth of knowledge of players. So what he tries to do, he tries to put you out to your bad foot or your awkward foot or stuff like that, and he tries to push you that way. And he knows that even if you get a shot off, the likelihood is Alisson might save it. But the problem for Van Dijk at the moment is he kind of hasn't got that confidence now, maybe in Costas or in Robbo. He hasn't got that confidence in who's partnering him in there, be it Matip or Kanate. He's very, very worried, obviously, about the situation with Trent. At times you see him on the pitch and he's screaming at Trent to fall back into position and stuff like that and all. He's nearly coaching him on the pitch at times. And he's kind of taken on a lot more. You even seen it there, even in the Brighton game. He's trying to cover so much for a number of players and stuff like that. And we know that that's going to come unstuck eventually. As I said, maybe he's thinking about the World Cup and stuff like that. It's so close now, and you know, him being so heavily involved. I think he's the Dutch captain, as far as I know, as well. And it's just, this season is just a weird one. The other thing I'd say as well is about, you know, I seen a stat there last week. I think it was only 30 minutes so far this season, I think, we've actually been in the lead in any of our games. For only 30 minutes so far this season, we've held a lead. It's that's a crazy stat. And if you think about it, and not bar the Bournemouth game, if you take the Bournemouth game out of it, but that's a crazy stat for Liverpool. The other thing I would say as well is if you look at how we've played football over the last 5 years, you know, the mental fatigue of chasing down Man City week on week, day on day, training session, the physicality and the mental toll that takes on players. I was listening to an article the other day and they said players that are world-class players that you would expect to have an 8, 10, 12-year career, sometimes because they're in this situation under a Klopp system, their career can be 6 years, because of the physicality and the mental fatigue that it puts on the body. And you see more and more players picking up injuries and stuff like that as well. So I just think, as I said to you, it's a collection of stuff at the back. I just think at the moment it's a confidence thing as well. But I think the problem as well at the back is stemming also from our problems in midfield. And I think in midfield this summer, I think we were sold a bum deal. A lot of people were talking about bringing in a midfielder. I thought we needed 2, if not more. I think they've sat back, they've let the squad stagnate, and it's kind of hasn't evolved. And you look at what if Pep is the benchmark and you see what Pep does, you know, he gets rid this year of Jesus. He gets rid of Zinchenko. He gets rid of Raheem Sterling. He's no problem selling them to Premier League teams. He doesn't care. Other teams will turn around and go, oh, I'm not going to sell them to a rival. They need to get out of this country kind of thing and all. That's the way it's been in the past. He doesn't care about that because he brings in Julian Alvarez. He brings in Haaland. He brings in Calvin Phillips. He brings in all these players. He also has a fantastic bench as well. He probably has 2 sets of an 11 that could compete handsomely in the Premier League. No problem. And I just think when you look at that, and we probably looked at that and we said, right, he's bringing in a striker. So we brought in Darwin Núñez. We bring in Darwin Núñez, kind of doesn't get off to quite the start that you want. Obviously gets the suspension with the stupidity of the headbutt. Comes back into the side, looks reasonable in his performance. But again, sometimes it's a change of system. We're not playing to exactly his strengths. We've taken arguably one of the best forward men in the league over the last 5 years in Mo Salah, and we've basically turned him into a winger. Really, really wide of it, like nearly of a 4. If you look at it yesterday, at one stage we were playing a 4-2-4, and it just the substitutions have been bewildering over the last 2 months at times, and I just think we've lost our way on so many levels. And look, that's not taking anything away from Arsenal. Arsenal have done a fantastic job. Arteta's done a fantastic job. And obviously you mentioned with Granit Xhaka as well. I thought the actual documentary was brilliant for Granit Xhaka because it actually showed the fan base how much he actually cared and stuff like that. And I think he won a few people back that way as well. And he really, really needed it. And because Granit Xhaka to me looks like one of those guys who he also kind of needs to be loved a little bit. He needs to be cared for and nurtured and stuff like that. And again, that's a vindication of Arteta as well in his man management when he was getting so much hassle over Aubameyang and stuff like that. He could have easily sent Xhaka out through the door as well, but he didn't. But yeah, in terms of going back to Liverpool and stuff like that, I think our midfield is a major issue. I think our best midfielder obviously is Thiago, but he's injury prone. I think all the others are probably not up to the level that we need. I think Henderson is coming towards the end more as a backup kind of 6 than he is an 8. Curtis Jones, the book is out on him. I don't know whether he's going to be good enough. Harvey Elliott, where he's very skillful and slick at times, I don't know whether he has the physicality for the Premier League. Carvalho we haven't seen, who was absolutely electric last year in the Championship with Fulham with Mitrovic, but we haven't really seen him. Fabinho has been poor this season, and it's carried on a little bit from last season where he kind of got injured at the tail end of last season along with Thiago, and then I think both players were played injured in the Champions League final. That's how it looked to me. And I just think there's been a number of issues there, and I also think there's something as well going on in the background there at Liverpool that we don't know about. I think there's something more internal that's causing some of these problems as well to manifest themselves on the pitch.
I missed the days when there was stuff happening in the background at Arsenal. All right, let's close up on the Arsenal game by letting Art have the last word as his team was the winners. Who's your next game in the league?
Leeds away on Sunday.
Leeds away, right.
Actually, no, sorry. We've got the Europa League first, actually.
Oh, no, I skip past that. Don't worry about it. I know. I think you guys are going to be fine in the Europa League. But in terms of the Premier League for now, I like to do a little prediction game. I know for now it's going to be a bit more harder because he's got City coming up. But regardless, Leeds away. Can you give us a little prediction, a little scoreline prediction? What you think will happen?
Scoreline, I would like to go 3-0. I feel like we should have enough firepower to, one, match their intensity, because we know Leeds like to go full guns blazing in games, and I feel like if they go for a shootout, we should have superior technical ability to cut through them. That's one thing where I feel like a lot of people have started to compare Arsenal and say Liverpool 5 years ago because of the tempo of play. But I feel like if you look at the two sides, Arsenal actually have more ball players, specifically in that midfield area. Yep. I think the one improvement they still have to make is being able to keep a clean sheet, because they haven't. I think they've kept a clean sheet in 8 games, or maybe 8 home games. But either way, they need to shut up shop, because those cheap goals will will add up. And I know, I think like over the past couple of seasons, last season in particular, just from a personal point of view, I really started to value 3 points and goal difference a lot more. I feel like in the Wenger era, it was almost taken for granted, because we finished in the top 4 for, I think it was almost 16 years in a row. You almost expected that to happen every year. So I feel like the importance of 3 points and goal difference has almost come back in a really real way over the past few years. So yeah, I'd predict 3-0 win for Arsenal, and I think Martinelli will be the key man again, because if it is a case of Arsenal setting traps with their press and then breaking, he's the guy they usually look to finish those moves. And he also scored twice there last season from those sort of situations. And just on Xhaka again, on Niall's point in terms of him looking like someone who needs to be loved. Before the documentary came out, a few of us had a chance to kind of speak to him. And one thing he mentioned was wanting more open training sessions in England, because obviously in Europe and specifically in Germany, they are very frequent, where fans and media will be able to watch training sessions. Obviously not the real kind of tactical parts of it, but just get a sense of the vibe and stuff like that. And he mentioned that he would actually want that to happen, even if it was once a week. He'd like that to be more of a thing in England, and obviously logistics around that and everything being in the kind of post-COVID world will bring up issues around that. But it's interesting that he was the one that kind of brought that up, and he said that he's spoken to Arsenal about it as well. And it's probably one that's more of a long-term thing over here. But I don't know if other players feel similar, because I feel like it makes the players more human in a way. I feel, because a lot of the time we as people, as fans, probably forget that, especially when you're just watching it and you're expecting them to perform a certain action to the right standard every single time. And then say if I go and play 11 aside and try and do the same thing, it's a very different result. So yeah, it's quite interesting that he's the one that's kind of tried to push for that. And I guess it's not one for the immediate kind of future, but it'll be interesting to see if anything like that happens over the next years.
I like
It's
that.
a great
Actually.
show.
I think
It's a great show.
Yeah, I think that'll be great fun for the fans as well.
Because I suppose often when it goes wrong as well, you question the work rate, don't you? So if you had more open training sessions, they'd be able to see the work that's being put in and stuff like that. So there'd be less questioning about that. Yeah, no,
absolutely.
It's
and I think
great show.
For football clubs here as well, actually, I think a lot of fans feel a lot more detached from their clubs than they would back in the day as well. So getting the clubs, especially with Arsenal, I think a lot of Arsenal fans that I've spoken to in the past, anyway, I felt like they've gone from being this close to Arsenal to like it being like this.
Yeah.
So, to bring the club back together, the fans and the players closer, that would be a brilliant idea. Niall, a prediction for you. So you got the mighty Man City. Give us a score prediction, what you think could happen.
If we could just keep them out for the first 20 minutes, the same as every other team this season, we'd be fine. I think if they score early, it could be the floodgates. I suppose from your point of view, Kojo, anything better than 6-3 is a result for us, really, isn't it? That's how I'm putting it out there. But I don't know. I think at some stage there has to be some sort of reaction. There has to be some team that does something there.
Yeah.
I can't believe for a minute they're going to go the whole season invincible. And it was interesting listening to Art's point as well about the 3 points and the goal difference. I'm of the vintage, Art. I remember Michael Thomas. That still hurts. Still hurts to this day. Don't worry. So it was nice to hear you say that as well, the goal difference as well. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe a high scoring draw. That's what I'm praying for. That's what I'm praying for. Maybe a 3-3 or something like that. If it's not that, we're gonna get pumped.
Well, they are coming to Anfield, aren't they? So
yeah, they are coming to Anfield, and that so far this season really hasn't made a difference. But hopefully the crowd will get up for it and get behind them. It's arguably one of our biggest fixtures of the season. Obviously, we've been chasing these guys down for 5 years, and have had some success in the past, but you have to believe that those players are proud enough to put a shift in this week and generate some sort of reaction. Again, I would say we have a huge game on Wednesday away at Ibrox to Rangers, and it depends what comes out of that. And we're hearing today Luis Diaz has gone now till December, and he's kind of been our one bright spark so far this season, apart from Alisson. Himself and Alisson have really been the two that have held their kind of level from last season somewhat. Where everyone else has kind of faded away. But I suppose if the players ever have to find any respect and any kind of level for themselves again, this Sunday is the time to do it. So yeah, hopefully a draw. I hope we don't get spanked too bad, but I'm going to go with a high scoring draw, maybe 3-3.
All right, 3-3. So we've got 3-0 for Arsenal away to Leeds. We've got 3-3 between Liverpool and Man City. And I'm going to go for myself. Man United play at home to Newcastle. Newcastle are in form, but I will try and back my boys. I will go for a 2-1 Man United win. And yeah, hopefully that
could be the game of the weekend, that Newcastle game. That to me, Eddie Howe, the job Eddie Howe is doing up there is just sensational.
Absolutely.
It's unbelievable.
And I'm honestly, a lot of people that listen to this podcast, they'll tell you I will have to eat my words because I tore into him the last year at Bournemouth, and then when he got the job at Newcastle, my first statement was, I don't think he's going to win improved as a manager. Well, that tells you what I know. So there you go. But next week's games, you got Friday 8 p.m. You got Brentford versus Brighton. On Saturday 12:30, Leicester Crystal Palace. The 3 p.m. will be Wolves and Nottingham Forest, Fulham, Bournemouth. Spurs play Everton 5:30 on Saturday. And your Sundays, there are 4 games at 2 o'clock, actually. Southampton, West Ham, Man United, Newcastle, Leeds, Arsenal, and Aston Villa, Chelsea, which will be an interesting game as well, actually. And of course, the 4:30 game to close the weekend will be Liverpool versus Manchester City. All right. I think we should wrap it up there. It's been a fun podcast. For anyone that's been watching, thank you for listening and always taking part in the comments. We've got a new subscriber as well, so check out the Cheap Heat production, guys, which I think, Cheap Heat, if my terminology is correct, is a wrestling podcast. I'm a wrestling fan.
It's not? He's a friend of mine, Morris. Yeah, he's mad into pro wrestling as well. But okay, he's a big Arsenal fan. He's a big gooner as well. So he loves the football. He actually does our fantasy football show once a week on the Friday.
Oh, so, nice. Okay.
Yeah, shout out to him. Yeah, he's good guy.
He's having a great time. Bray Wyatt came back to WWE in a spectacular fashion, and his team won on the weekend as well. So he's having a great weekend. I'll check out that podcast. I'm a pro wrestling. I'm more of a WWE fan. I do keep my eye out on the AEWs and the rest of them, but WWE is my home.
There's a big show coming up on Voice in the next few weeks. It's like do you remember the Dark Side of the Ring series?
Yeah,
they're doing one on Vince McMahon. And Morris's podcast is featured in it. Actually, he did a deal with Voice to be featured in it, so pretty cool. He's doing great stuff over there, Cheap. He has some brilliant interviews over there as well with some great people.
Brilliant. Well, in that case, guys, subscribe to Cheap Heat Productions podcast. That's a cheap pop right there for him as well. Now, before you guys go as well, we always like to plug you guys as well. So, Niall, as the newest guest onto the show, you can go first. Please let us know where they can find you.
Yeah, it's the upper tier out there on YouTube, and you'll also find us. We're on all the social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. Or if you want to contact us, it's the upper tier podcast at gmail.com. We produce content on a daily basis. We cover most of football. And within that podcast, we have the Shankly Sessions, which is the Liverpool one within it, that I cover all the matches. I do the previews. I do the reactions, the player ratings, and we do look backs as well on some of the older stuff as well, and some of the yesteryear players who have passed away and stuff like that. We always go back and look at them on their anniversaries and stuff like that. So, and we also do a number of interviews as well with legends from the League of Ireland, and we talk some of them as well. Players that have played from Shamrock Rovers and Bohemians and playing teams like that and stuff like that. So interesting interviews, and to get their take on how football has evolved.
Excellent. And for anyone listening, you can find his links in the bio below on the video. And Art, other than top of the league, where else can we find
you? So yeah, mostly on Twitter. My @ is @ Art de Roche. ARTDEROCHE. Luckily, I could spell my name. Yeah, mostly just talking about Arsenal. Cover the men's, women's, and academy teams for the Athletic, and should be in Norway this week ahead of the Bodø/Glimt game, which should be very interesting. It's actually in the Arctic Circle, so it'll be a very unique one for a lot of people. And then hopefully more good stuff on the weekend with Leeds. And sometimes I will stream video games on Twitch, which not a lot of people watch, but it's good fun when I get to do it. So that's Twitch, probably .tv_AJ de Roche, I think, if I can remember properly. But yeah, that's me, and hopefully you guys enjoyed the pod with all of us today.
Absolutely. I'm itching to have a foot manager game with you, by the way, but that's another discussion. You can also find his links below in the bio. I'm going to go and add the Twitch link to that as well, actually, now that I forgot about that, so I'm going to add that as well. But yes, you can find us here on YouTube, The Match Report. We are your boys at Free Midfield, of course, so all of your socials and your audio is that it's still Free Midfield Podcast. The audio should be out probably tomorrow, which is Tuesday, if not Wednesday for sure. But all links will be posted on the Twitter, of course, for you to go and check out. Free Midfield Podcast, everywhere else, The Match Report here on YouTube. My name's been Kojo. This has been Niall. This has been Art. Kale couldn't make it, unfortunately, but he's probably at home smiling his face off the weekend. But he'll sure be back next Monday. And that's all from us. So have a good night. Cheers.